This conference will now be recorded.
All right, we'll call to order Monterey Select Board at 6 PM, February 8th. All three members present here in Town Hall. First item of business is Southern Berkshire Ambulance. So there's some draft letters that Susan drafted.
And there's
Yeah,
a
you
one
drafted
yours.
too.
Yeah, I think that was the first.
Yep.
First attempt, but I like your letter, Susan.
Okay, cool. Obviously, I stole a lot from yours, but just.
The whole idea being that it just wasn't fair the way that it was. And,
So I just to let you guys know, I heard from a reliable source, I'm not going to say who we know. That the ambulance has made a comment that if the towns aren't going to give the money, then they are not going to serve our town.
Wow. They're not, if we don't give the money, they, exactly as they asked for it?
so I
I asked this person to go back to that person and say, you know, I think they're open to conversation, but I don't know if they're open to changing the numbers, I just wanna do that.
Well, I think that's, the thing is, we're not trying to deny them the amount of money they're asking for, we're just saying, hey, the way you're asking for it doesn't really make sense.
Well, we're kind of denying it.
Well,
Well, we're getting them the 350,000
in a different
in
way.
a different way.
I think the question is, who should, I think we need to sit down at a table with some folks. And the question to me is, do we think that's the way to go, and if so, who should be at that table? And I don't think it's just the towns that are gonna be unhappy with the assessment, I think it has to be Sheffield and Barrington also, because, and it has to be the ambulance company. I think we need all the players at the table to say, yeah, we support the ambulance, but this is not an equitable way to distribute the costs, and you know.
Well written and that you're right on with it.
Right, so
By
like,
the
it's
way-
not like I wanna slap them.
By the way, Sheffield's is 3,000 lower in your proposal too. Because what's really happening is they mostly serve Great Barrington
Right.
by far. And the way they drew it up, they were trying to really save Great Barrington a bunch of money.
I get it, and I understand why. I mean, I had a good conversation with Mark Rohetsky, and they do have an ambulance, and they don't have paramedics. But the reality, and I, you know, I feel like this has to be part of the discussion. Sure, you can run your own ambulance, but if Barrington were to completely switch to running their own ambulance, let's be honest, can you really do it with one? Because if they pull out of SBS, SBS is likely to go under. If SBS goes under, you have 1,300 calls plus a year. That's 3.5 on average a day, but that also means that there are going to be plenty of days where you are over that and your one ambulance cannot service the calls. And then who is going to cover you?
Yeah.
And are you gonna say when someone has an accident every month, no, we're not going, we don't cover them? Like they've said, they don't wanna be the regional service Barrington, which I completely understand and
You
don't blame
mean
them for.
that, not Southern Berkshire, but
No, Barrington,
Barrington
but
had to take it
the
over.
issue, as I understand it, and maybe this is what I've gotten from several sources, is that if the number for Barrington goes too high, some bright line that no one's willing to say, Barrington will just say, forget it, we're gonna run our own ambulance.
Well, what is your proposal?
230, I think it would be 238 for Barrington, but I do think it's,
262?
no,
238.
238.
I think my
I-
early one was
yeah,
238.
I think it's
I
negotiable
don't think that
how
Barrington
you do
has-
it, but.
Has anything to really say about it, because I doubt that they could formulate an ambulance service.
They have EMTs at an ambulance
For that
right
right
this
now.
minute.
Great Barrington has their own.
But they
Yes.
can't,
Yeah, but they can't
And-
field it 24/7.
and also Southern Berkshire has 2 units.
So
And paramedics.
when did that happen?
Barrington doesn't have any paramedics.
Right.
When did
I
that
can't remember
move?
when he said, was it 1 or 2 years ago that he said that they got that, and it was to handle the overflow or whatever?
From Southern Berkshire?
Yeah,
So who does 911 call? Southern Berkshire or the
Probably-
Great Barrington?
well, no, 911 calls dispatch, and then depending on what town you're in, they dispatch whatever ambulance. So like if a call comes in from New Marlboro, they dispatch New Marlboro because they have their own ambulance.
But when New Marlboro isn't showing up in a timely manner, they call Sanesfield or Otis
Right.
or Southern Berkshire. And so,
Well, what do those surrounding towns cost a year for them to?
so
man and-
this kind of brings back to a report that is very long from 2020.
Yeah, it's the one I sent you guys.
Yeah.
Around 2020, but there was a study done on Southern Berkshire Ambulance. And all things considered, this consultation proposed having two regional ambulances. One in either where Southern Berkshire is now or Great Barrington, I think. And then another one to serve the three towns that already have their own ambulance, Sanesfield, Otis, and New Marlboro, and Monterey. And that second ambulance would either be stationed in Monterey at the current fire station, or Sanesfield Fire Station number 2 on 57.
Yeah.
Right after you get off of West Road.
Mhm.
And take a left right there, because those were the two most central kind of locations. Nothing really came of that in terms of real changes that I'm aware of. But the fact of the matter is, like you're pointing at, Otis, Sanesfield, New Marlboro already put an amount of money into running their own ambulance service. But none of them are as high level as Southern Berkshire because it's a one-town ambulance. But if 4 towns combined or more, we could probably service something closer to Southern Berkshire than a single town ambulance.
And I mean, I think if we're going,
Or
right
equal to
now,
or less than Southern Berkshire's,
well, right now, Southern Berkshire is offering 24/7 coverage.
$50,000. Ish.
Yeah, and paramedics, so it's a pretty high level of performance, and I'm not unhappy with the job they're doing. It's only the inequity of how they're distributing the charges. And I don't know what the future holds, but for this year, and you know what, like in the relative scheme of things, I'm not gonna deny that paying the 50K may be the easiest way through. But I think that we need to get to the table and have that conversation, because I just feel like it's not reasonable to be asking us to pay $750 a trip when Barrington pays $112.
Does equal about $50 a taxpayer for the 1,000 of us that there is. Which isn't much to pay.
I know.
You know,
But it's
add
$750,
on top of
right, yeah.
Everything else in
I
the
know.
budget, all of a sudden you're paying $3,000.
And that's the thing, it's not that it's that huge a fee, it's that we'd be paying $750 for the same trip that Barrington gets for $112.
Yeah, no, I think
It's just, yeah,
drafting the letter and getting it to them, signed by us and asking for a meeting is,
but the
So
question
right
then
then.
would be, who would we propose be at the meeting? And like, who would we wanna send, and who do we think needs to be there?
at least the towns on that.
Right, the towns,
On the
and
towns that they
ambulances.
sent the bills to.
But who would we send from our town? Like, what positions are we sending? Are we sending the fire chief, a select board member, a
Oh,
finance committee
yeah.
member, the TA? Can't send 15 people, but so we gotta pick.
Right.
Right.
Well, I remember going to meetings at the Southern Berkshire and there were police chiefs there. I don't think Garrett was with me. But I went and there were other members in the building, in the room. It
Right.
was quite a bit of us. And I think there were random select board members and police chiefs, their EMS coordinator, I think is really what each town sent.
Mm.
And they went and talked all about the different things, but it didn't have to do with this at the time being. So those are the people, the town select board, a member of the town select board and each town's EMS would probably be the way to go.
What's your thought? I mean, I'm not gonna disagree with you.
Yeah, I think what I think what you're getting at is that the police chief serves as the 911 coordinator, maybe?
No, Jim serves as the 911.
Or Jim
coordinator.
serves as
The police chief serves as the emergency management director.
And then there's like one select board member that's also on that committee, right? And that used to be that when there were certain emergencies, instead of everybody going in,
It was a command team.
that met up at the firehouse.
Okay.
Well, I think regardless, if Monterey can have someone supporting, because out of everyone, we got hit really hard with their assessment.
Mhm.
And even the way that I drafted, the way that you drafted, especially the way you drafted it, Monterey is paying its fair share. It's still the second highest per call.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like anybody's saying, no, we're done.
I think what we're all trying to avoid is Great Barrington saying, no, we're done. Like, and I get that. But-
Well, what is that scenario?
I don't know, that until we sit down and table them, how are we gonna know? Right,
Because,
Mark just
who are
hinted
they
at
saying
it.
no for it there? That would have
He's
to go
saying
through
that
vote, right?
if the price goes too high, they'll run their own ambulance, it's essentially what the implication is, no one's coming right out and
Well,
saying
what's
that.
the real
This is
implication to
politics.
each citizen with saying that as a board? Because if all of a sudden somebody doesn't get care because of some thing that was said in an office,
I don't know,
I don't know what that, to me, that's a little strange to say that.
no one says that directly, they just hint it, it's politics, right?
Well, we're in a little bit of the same situation where we recognize that Southern Berkshire has the best care available in our area. To try and team up with New Marlboro, Otis, or Sanesfield at this point would be a disservice to our residents. But it would also be a disservice to not try and fight for kind of a fair assessment.
100%.
So
Absolutely.
I think
So let's just say that.
this meets a middle ground. And if they say, we can't provide service at that amount of fund,
And then
that
happens
amount of
on the
funding,
top of the hill, right?
yeah, we can
Bring it to
say,
the voters.
we need this amount of money. The other kind of thing that we haven't talked a lot about, because it doesn't matter so much, they've undergone a leadership change, but when they asked for ARPA funds, they said they didn't need town money anymore for operating expenses. And now they're saying they need $350,000.
Yeah.
So
I mean-
that's a little bit.
Well, that's a
I wouldn't-
question that should be
Right.
pondered and vetted out.
I wouldn't mind hearing a little more about how they came up with the 350, like, it may be a real number, but they didn't actually present us with any information about that. But, so are you saying we should just do the letter and not push for a meeting?
I think that we should send the letter that you said, including a meeting, because I think all towns want the best service. If you are in an emergency, you want a paramedic showing up at your house.
Yeah.
Like Sean said in his letter, EMTs these days don't have a lot of authority. Paramedics, have a bit more authority and can provide that like advanced life support on the way to the hospital, which is still 10 minutes away, even flying through red lights.
Yep.
And,
Yeah, but you want that.
yeah, I think we all want Southern Berkshire or something like it to
Right.
continue. It's just money.
But I just think that we need to encourage a conversation that involves Sheffield and Barrington as well.
That's it.
So that Southern Berkshire isn't put in the position of having to say, well,
Do we have a clean copy of your letter that's
Yeah,
signable?
I have these, and then do you want, because I'll email them to everybody, should I throw in a few dates, like, so that we don't prolong the process, maybe,
I think it's a good idea.
let's suggest some.
Understanding it's budget season, et cetera.
Whenever they make that date, if
Yeah.
you want me to go, I'll go. If you would like to go, you also have direct experience with the fire department, so I'm completely supportive of that. You guys
It would
are
be good
working more than I am, and I'm more open, so I'm
Yeah.
willing to do it if you would prefer. I'll go either way, right? I'm
That's
not
Awesome.
willing to go, and I'm
Let's
willing to
just see
go
what
if
the
you.
date is. Let's leave like a
Right,
ZBA
Maybe
date.
throw some
We
like
can-
Thursdays out, like at
Whatever they throw
5,
out,
6, 7,
we can ask.
Yeah.
Just so.
so that people at least have a starting point, because otherwise everybody's gonna be like, oh, well, when, and, like.
Yeah.
If we put some dates on there, then we can at least get that ball rolling.
Yeah, the agenda would just be open discussion, roundtable, beginning discussion.
Right, let's,
No.
how are we gonna come up with, we need to support the
Yeah.
fire, we need to support the ambulance,
I mean,
but we
there
need
may
to
be
do it in a way
motions
that works
made
for all the
that,
town.
that we can approve.
Yeah.
And go forward from there, that yes, we will put it on our budget for this and any other amount speaks volumes, right?
Right.
So,
Yeah,
there you go, that's what we appropriated.
Put it with like a remote option, so in case. It
Absolutely.
makes it easier for everybody to.
Yup.
So there's something you wanna see, I guess.
Okay.
Yeah, remote would be, that's the way to go.
Cause it should make it easier than putting it in front of each, get it. Excelente. Thank you, gentlemen. Ooh. I just get the signature train rolling.
Alright, so the police chief accepted the contract that we proposed to him most recently. Which was actually at this point 3 weeks ago.
That's happening now, that's good.
Alright, so we signed that, that's good.
Just that one.
Yeah. Don't have to sign it quicker than this. Yeah.
So item 3 is the process for the town administrator annual performance evaluation. So Alex from our town council firm got back to us last Wednesday, kind of during our meeting or right after.
Yep.
And,
I think she CC'd us all.
or I sent it to her, whatever,
Okay.
yeah. So the proposed process is excellent and exactly what we recommend to our select boards when they're evaluating town officials within their appointing authority. So it's more or less sending all the forms to the HR director who will compile them into a comprehensive summary evaluation. As far as sending the comprehensive evaluation out to select board members,
It looks like that's a no.
yeah, she wrote, at that point, if members of the select board review or comment on the summary evaluation, which I refer generally to as the composite evaluation, outside a public meeting, it would violate the open meeting law. She cites a case from 2018. The Supreme Judicial Court held that any circulation of documents containing opinions of members, even if there's no back and forth discussion amongst the members, constituted a deliberation such that the public must be permitted access. The case that she references notes that the composite evaluation can only be distributed to the members by distribution at a properly noticed open meeting or posting on the town website. That's the summary there, but, and then she sent a copy of what Needham uses, which is actually very similar to the form that Great Barrington used and that we adapted.
And the one difference that I think Needham, that I noticed when I read the Needham thing is that they had a former select board member doing the review.
And I
rather than Carlin.
was curious about that because it looked like it was a 5-member board, at least because there was 5 signatures. So it said
Oh, I did.
it said the former chair.
I think-
So I don't know if that means that person was a former select board member, or just they could still be on the select board but not the chair.
True, although usually what happens is, in a lot of those rotations, the chair rotates out, right?
Yes, off the
Yeah,
board.
often, so I was making, and your point is well taken, I was making the assumption that what they were doing was allowing the person who had left the board, but understood the process and had worked with the person to be the evaluator. In our case, I'm not sure that's gonna work right now, but it was an interesting workaround.
It's a terrible process. The guy who just
Well,
left.
Right, yeah, sorry, gone but not forgotten,
Well,
right?
it was weirdly worded. That was my first thought. My second thought was maybe it's still a member of the board, but not the chair anymore.
But that would be deliberation. I mean, I think it's
Well,
gotta be
if it's
someone that's not
5
serving. It
members,
still would be, because you're sharing many people's opinion, and that's what they're saying. The way that that's worded doesn't indicate the number of board members. It's not about a quorum, it's about a discussion at all.
no, it's a discussion amongst a quorum.
Is it?
Yes, because if you have a 5-member board, 2 members can deliberate all day long. That's the advantage.
Yeah, it's just weird though, because then if, member A and B talk, and member C and D talk, and then B and C talk.
You can't do,
share.
well, you can't do that.
But how would you know? Because it's
If
okay
you
for them
could-
to talk.
If you could prove it, I mean, if you.
Right, I love that.
Anyway,
Anyway,
we're not,
whatever.
we're not in
gonna
that
fix
situation, we're not in that situation. The
Right.
situation we are in is the forms have been sent to the HR director who's compiling them.
Yep.
And
Follow their rule.
I think so.
so, as far as I'm concerned, what would make the most sense based on our previous discussion is for the HR director to compile a composite evaluation, and then that's the end of the select board involvement. Unless the HR director otherwise wants to re-involve the select board, at that point, we would need to go to town council and say, how do we do this?
Right.
But assuming that doesn't happen, the select board is done with it, with the process.
Seems that way. You okay with that? Okay.
And I would think she would only involve you if there was a problem that you needed to be aware of, and if that was the case, then it'd be an executive session.
Yes, I think at this point, the select board is not involved unless the HR director wants to involve the select board.
For some reason, in which case, we'll know. I don't know.
The town clerk job description. So, did you get a chance to go over this with me?
So it's, we took yours, I just put, yours are all accepted in there, and you'll see a few small changes that I made. In the job description.
This is number 4, right?
So I just,
So they will be one of the RAOs, they will, just web page, just change the page, not really substantive.
right, so it doesn't make it sound like it's the whole.
Yeah.
And then the remove transfer station stickers just for now.
Mhm.
And then confidentiality was added.
Yeah.
So if everybody's good with that. Sophia said maybe we should add, certification, as a plus, but.
Is that a job description?
Or in the end.
Under the knowledgeability and skill, maybe.
I would do it. I mean, I think a certified town clerk is preferable if possible,
Definitely desirable.
So certification is preferable.
or
No.
desirable. You think so or not?
I think having it in there somehow is good. You wouldn't want to say, make somebody feel that, I don't have it, so I'm not really gonna get the job.
Well, it's like how they put in all the entry level advertisements now, 5 to 7 years of experience is preferable. It's like,
Yeah, 20 years of experience is preferable, especially if we can pay you an entry-level salary.
Really?
So I'll just add certification that's desirable under knowledgeability and skill then.
yeah, maybe just specify town clerk certification there.
Certification upgrade or upgrading to and.
Well, we might,
whatever.
I mean, the idea being someone might apply with a certification, or they might be serving and then get a certification.
And I just on that topic, I feel like the $1,000 required bonus from Mass is one thing, but I think that if we got someone who wasn't certified but was willing to get certified, I think there should also be an understanding that their salary would increase as a result of that certification, just like we bump up people who work for the DPW when they get additional licenses. It's not a one-off, here's a bonus. It's we recognize your increased level of expertise.
Does that happen during the year they get it?
Or
Once they get the certification, they get that extra 1,000.
How would you budget for that?
Well, I guess you wouldn't pay them at the top of it. I mean, it's gonna take them at least a year to get it anyway, so I
Right.
think you would have
Right.
time to.
maybe that plan.
So under the knowledge that if I get certified, my next year's pay is gonna.
It's only a one-off.
It's a one-off, yeah.
The
Yeah, so, I
$1,000,
mean-
right, but the $1,000 is a one-off, but I'm saying that I think it merits an increase in their pay rate if they do that as
Yeah.
well.
Definitely.
Because a more permanent change, that's all.
So with the changes as shown here and the addition and knowledgeability and skill of the mentioned town clerk certification, I would move to approve the new town clerk job description.
Second,
Any other discussion on that? Call a vote?
Yep.
And yes, that's unanimous yes vote for the job description. For the advertisement, we had discussed wages last week, and we were saying, what, 34 or 35?
So
It's 35.
I think we came up with 35. I just wanted to throw out there that I actually looked at the data she gave us a little more closely and focused on not the overall average for the state, but the Berkshire's averages. It's like the ones that aren't salaried, but I actually calculate salaries for some of them. I'm thinking 30 is at the top there, but I don't see a problem with putting this in there. It's because it's commensurate with experience anyway. So I'm just thinking like 30 might, unless the person has certification, I think that we could probably do 30, but I kind of want to take a wait and see on that one.
That's a good point you just made. So the 35 an hour, depending on experience, that's kind of vague. And certification,
I was just gonna say that.
you know, because if somebody comes in with, I've got 2 years of being a clerk, well, does that mean I'm expecting 35?
They
I think 35, sorry, would be like 30 years
With these-
experience certification.
With certification.
But I don't think there's any problem in advertising that, because in the case.
No, I just thought that we should add that certification puts you to that 35 bump.
Experience and certification, meaning your entire
Yeah.
qualifications.
Right. Instead of just having 2 years for your background, you know, that you work 35.
The only other piece we still have to work out is what we wanna say about hours, and what do you think about doing a survey? I think Melissa suggested it's not bad if we wanna know. I am curious, because I've heard such conflicting things about people actually what they need from the clerk's office and how much of it's online, et cetera.
Yeah.
I don't know how we would
I don't
go forward with it.
know if it raises to a survey
Okay.
level to see when people want the town clerk, but if we wanna do a survey, can't hurt.
I don't know how we get quick turnaround and get it well distributed. There's the Google group. If we, if you put something on the town website, then it's only who hits the town website. So you have to like, how long do we want it to take? Do we wanna put it in the
1 week.
next? Yeah, but like, do we wanna put it in the Monterey News? Do we wanna just put it out on Google group? Like, how, if we're gonna do it, we should ask people and we can only ask them if they know, right? Just a question, not an answer.
This is a survey, did you see that? This is a survey about
It's in the
when
packet.
people would want the town clerk available.
I'm just thinking of myself, as somebody taking the survey. It's like, I don't really ever come in to see a town clerk, other than mail my dog licenses and things, so I really don't have the need for office hours. How about you? I mean, out of 3 of us.
So I
citizens in
did
the
a
room, just
DBA,
curious.
I think I registered to vote, I got an absentee ballot once.
Well, I've done a DBA,
Yeah.
and I didn't come in for that, so, but I could have done that on any day they were open.
Yeah.
But maybe in.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of where I'm headed out with, I don't know if it even merits a survey, it's kind of like, oh, the select board's putting out kind of a silly survey.
Yeah.
How about we just keep the hours, that what made the town hall function the best? We always wanted the clerk during one of our meetings, right? Here, wasn't that kind of,
If we needed it,
wanted
yeah.
a Wednesday, didn't we want her here Wednesday?
Doesn't bother me any.
We had a lot of discussion. I don't really know, cause also if you find the right person and they wanna work these 10 hours a week, do you say no because we needed these 10?
How do you feel about it?
Well, I think for the purposes of the ad, leaving it the way it is, lets people know that this is what we're expecting. And I think if the right candidate comes in when we're interviewing them and they say, I really can't do those 2 days, but I can do these 2 days, and these hours, then I think you work with them, But I think letting people know off the top that this is the schedule that we're expecting.
Could we put in some flexibility?
Well, yeah, I mean, it
Can
only
we
says
negotiate?
it requires up to 10 hours during normal town office hours on 2 non-consecutive days, Tuesday through Friday. So I mean, that lets me know that there's some flexibility there.
I read it that it was gonna be Tuesdays and Fridays. I'm sorry.
Want me to spell out
That's
through?
kind of rigid.
I can spell out through if you
what if we just do the position requires up to 10 hours per week? And that's that, and we deal with, obviously if someone says, I can work, Saturday from 1 AM to 11 PM, that's
That's a
not
no.
gonna happen.
Right, yeah.
But it kind of leaves the flexibility where if it's the right person, we work with them. And hopefully, I
But it
wanna
says
make,
normal town hall operating hours. Yeah, you may be right on to that, just leave it at that.
Can we leave the 2 non-consecutive days in there though, so the people know that it's not like.
Yeah, I would think so,
not a 1 10-hour day.
yeah.
Right.
I don't know that,
And that it's not, Monday, Tuesday.
I think it's a
Why
good
can't that
idea.
be back-to-back days?
It was more for timing with like posting things and,
but
Because it's almost, I think it's, go ahead.
if the town clerk's office is kind of just operating full throttle, I don't think it matters as much. I mean, it come election times and early voting and all that jazz, it does more. But anyone who's who's gonna be making that 35 and we're working with for the 10 hours should have that knowledge. And if not, we'll request some more flexibility from them.
I
All we
think,
need to do is take out the 2 words, Tuesday, Friday, and just leave it
well,
2 non-consecutive days, 10 hours a week.
and see what kind of response we get.
yeah, and I think I'm still in favor of the non-consecutive days because of the turnaround time. Because if you had 1 day a week, 10 hours, or 2 days right next to each other, if there is something in between, and that person is truly working those office hours,
Yeah.
and I don't mean like during the election.
Yeah.
Then there's no possibility of a response in the intervening week, whereas,
It
like,
may work out that somebody wants to do 8 and 2, and that could be ideal, 2 to 4 in the afternoon someday, you never know, so.
I'm pretty flexible about it,
Put
I
a
just think
stamp on
that
it.
only once a week is
Okay.
problematic.
So just taking out Tuesday through Friday.
So we're keeping in, the position requires 10 hours per week during normal town hall operating hours on 2 non-consecutive days, or is it just
Yes. And just
up to
take it
10
out.
hours per week on 2 non-consecutive days?
First option.
Position requires up to 10 hours per week during normal town hall operating hours on 2 non-consecutive days, period.
Okay.
At least that's my take.
Alright.
Alright.
That's what we're going with. Okay. Fiscal year 24 budget, we have one item in particular is the assessor's consulting services for 5-year reval, which I see Scott online, who's the chair of the Board of Assessors. Scott, are you there?
On my microphone, I am here, Justin.
All right, thank you. So we haven't gone through the formal procurement process, but we have 2 quotes for the services needed, one at 14,500, one at 15,000.
So they're
Yes.
comparable.
If I'm not mistaken, Scott. Yeah, so I think it's probably gonna be one of those situations where there's just an industry rate. The idea being that we would add this to the fiscal year 24 budget, probably I don't know if we want to do 14.5 or 15, and then
Well,
go through the
it-
formal procurement process in the summer, once we have the funds available. Yep, Scott.
if I may, let's go with the 15. I don't think we'll need it, but if something comes up a little unexpected, it's there and it's $500. It just might make things easier. We may not need it, but I'd like to do that if you don't mind.
Yeah.
Do I
So,
undo again now? Is that it? Yeah, okay, got it.
yeah, we got you, Scott. That's it, I think. I mean, we should probably discuss it at a joint meeting, because that's how we're supposed to do things with finance committee, but
Were they sent? Scott, you sent the quotes to the finance committee also, yes? I think
Yes. Yes, the finance committee got Everything you folks got. We sent everything to everybody. Hopefully we didn't overdo it, but yes, everything to everyone.
So we can raise it with them next week if
Yeah.
we need to.
And do we feel, I've still never understood, maybe Melissa, and maybe, and Scott too, since you've had years of experience, what is a special article and what is just a change in the line? Like,
I'm sorry, I'm having just a little trouble
Special
understanding
article,
it.
Yeah.
because it should be a one-time expense.
understood. So same thing with like ball field,
Right.
which is also,
Yeah, it's money raised for one particular item instead of,
There shouldn't be a recurring.
right,
Right.
yeah, one.
Right, our expense won't be recurring till 5 years from now. No.
I think there's some poor network connection, but I think you were just saying that it won't be recurring?
It
Shake
will
your head.
recur, but in 5 years, because it's every
Right.
5 years.
We can hear you.
Connection's terrible, I'm sorry.
Where's his locate, where's he located? Oh, he should get something.
Maybe if I take the picture down, I'll get a better.
We're hearing you better now.
Oh, you hearing me better now?
All
Okay.
right, try now.
Yeah. In other words, it's not recurring every year. Well, let me back off on that a little bit. Every year we do a reval. The 5-year reval is the big one, where there's a big expense and a lot of time required by a consultant. So that's the big one every 5 years. This year, of course, for 24, and then 5 years would be 29. Every year, though, we do a smaller reval, and we always have. It's been since always. And that reval usually requires the help of a consultant, but on a much lower level. In fact, this past year, I think the bill was $2,000 from Mayflower for that. That's just always been. Yeah, I can't hear a
Got it,
thing.
thank you, Scott.
You're welcome.
Also, what, can you hear me, Scott?
Yes, I can hear you now. Well,
One question that I had, it just is only a question of a couple $1,000s, but
sure.
matters, I guess. If we're doing the 5-year reval, would we take off the regular amount of money that we pay Mayflower from assessor's expenses or whatever line that is in? Or is that going to be in addition to the regular?
I'm sorry. Ask me that
$2,000?
again. I'm not quite sure I heard everything or understand everything.
Yeah, the regular line item, like you said, every year we usually use a assessing consulting firm, usually Mayflower, if I understand
Yes,
correctly,
yes,
for
yes,
a few $1,000s.
yes.
If we are doing the 5-year reval and paying a much higher sum for the 5-year reval, will we take a couple $1,000s off because we won't be using that regular consulting services?
That's a good question. That's a good question. That's a great
You had
question.
asked,
I don't have the answer to that.
you had
I will find out. I will
you
find
had
out.
added an extra 3,000 professional services. Four.
I lost that one. There's 3,000 for consulting services. Is that what you said?
Yeah, you had another 4,000 in professional services up from this year. So I think that's what Justin's asking is, can we take the 4,000 off of that?
Now it depends when it was, what year it's for. But that's a good question, and I'll find out.
Yeah, we don't need to solve it all tonight, but if we can look into that and change accordingly, let's do that.
Sure,
Maybe,
sure. I'll check it out and get back to you very
the-
promptly.
his sheet and tag the lines or whatever.
Thank you, Scott.
You're welcome. Do you need me anymore? Should I stand by or should I go have dinner?
That's all that I had for this item.
Go eat.
I'm gonna eat some baked ziti, if I believe. So, you guys have a wonderful night. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Scott, too.
Thank you. Melissa, what line item is he just referring to? 'Cause I don't see.
Well, so if on
Board of
the,
Assessors page.
yeah, so it's combined in their expenses.
I'm looking at this sheet.
Okay, so if you look at
It's like
line,
135. It's just 32. No.
I'm not sure what's on there because it doesn't, it combines them now.
Expense.
yeah, it's under their
Right.
expenses, which should
So that's why it's
total.
94 right
Right,
now.
but if you look at the
Yeah.
breakout, the professional services last year was 2750, and then they requested this, but I'm pretty sure they requested this 6500, thinking that they were increasing the bump up for the services for the reval, but then when they got the estimate for the actual reval, instead of 6500, it was 14,500. Pardon?
That's a nice catch.
Yes, exactly. So it's hard, because that's the total of all of this,
Right, 'cause
rather than just that
And it
one
doesn't
thing.
have these
The breakout, right.
titles in it. So you
Because
don't
it's,
see
you
where
get
it
the
is.
total
Yeah, right,
instead of
right.
that, that's the only reason I brought it
Yep.
up. It's on the, if you pull up the master work
I've
budget, it's
got
under
more issues
assessors.
going on with my laptop.
Okay, I'm not touching it.
And Kathy is fighting Norton.
Oh,
Wet room.
God.
You want me to update you on my meeting with the parks today real quick? or-
Yeah, fiscal year 24 budget.
So I won't just put the new numbers in the budget sheet and I'll send you guys a new one, but they did agree to remove the ping pong table until maybe next year. We're gonna remove the hiking trail for 9,500 because I'm gonna try to get the Concom. I did briefly look at the law today and I think it's going to be allowed. I have an email out to the accountant to double check with her. And they took off the bike station because they found out that in Beckett or Otis, that was donated by one of the bike clubs. Sorry, you missed that part before. And they're gonna see when the store opens if they can find a bike club that will do that. They're gonna keep the baseball field on. They are not happy with the quote that they got, so we're gonna do a little bit of.
Because it's not specific enough?
Yeah, 'cause it's not. So we're gonna, Jerry is going to contact Mark Volk, who I told him had worked on the Barrington one, see if he can get something.
Well, can they get a more specific quote from
The same.
Ducat who did the quote? I mean, it was pretty bad,
Right,
but maybe he wasn't really thinking, and I don't think the quote of 9,500, from everything I know, is outlandish in terms of money. It's just we need some specifications so that we can hold them accountable.
right. So they seemed a little upset that the original quote was 7,500 and this one went up to 9,500. But they all agree, we all agree that we want a specific scope of services so that he can't say, well, I did what I said, but now you need to do mowing and tilling and.
We do, I'm just hoping, and maybe we can do a placeholder of like 9,000 or 9,500 in the annual town meeting warrant if we don't have a quote yet. I'm just hoping it doesn't take another
3 months. Yeah, you get a quote.
We are, Jerry said he was gonna make calls tomorrow, we are gonna work on it, but they weren't agreeable to diminishing any of the lifeguard hours or anything, so that we would have been able to transfer those monies and not put it on the town meeting warrant. They wanna,
The beach gets heavy use, and I think.
It
that-
does, but
yeah.
in June, before school's out,
Mm.
so we looked at all the calendars, school
there's
gets out
$9,000 left in lifeguarding.
June 14th, they want them to start, that next week,
June 21st.
or the 24th.
Okay, so
Look at, so.
here's the thing, you're thinking just public school. I can tell you that last year, the beach was plenty full after Memorial Day, even during the weeks, because most private schools in New York are finished after Memorial Day.
That's it.
But it's Memorial Day,
Not
that's
all.
right, right?
They
It
get,
isn't all young kids either anymore. You go up there,
That's true.
they also felt that they didn't.
I mean, if we're talking about, yeah, get it, me too. If we're, yeah, I mean, just based on how many, short-term rental people we have showing up at the beach, a lot of those people are heading out of the city as soon as school is over.
So
And
what was that dollar value of the year? I'm just gonna compare that to the Southern Berkshire Volunteer Ambulance.
Well, for the season, I think it's gonna be about 25. So now that I have their schedule, I'm gonna contact,
Life saving is
Berkshire
expensive
South.
business. So for our lifeguards, for the beach, it's 25 grand a year.
For 7 days a week.
And for our,
how many?
for 85 calls a year, they're asking for 50.
They're asking for 50, but they do get money from insurance and
You see, there's.
patients.
It's not as lopsided as it sounds.
But I think the difference being you don't go to the beach and pay for the lifeguard. If you take an ambulance ride, you and your insurance are paying. This $350,000.
I don't go to the beach and I still pay for it. Yeah, you do.
Well,
pay
at least
for
you're
it.
not in the Buell tax district and paying for both the Buell weeds
Oh,
and
I
the
know,
Garfield
I know,
weeds.
I know. So,
So the other thing, I lowered the beach monitor because they had it in there from Memorial Day to Labor Day, which I hadn't caught, and I said, well, you're not gonna get that money till July, so we should
what
shorten
is a
that
beach
time.
monitor?
They want someone there,
Who's
to,
they?
the Parks Commission,
Uh-huh.
they intend to institute stickers again, so they want someone to.
How does that gonna fly? It's a great lake, it's a great pond.
Parking,
Parking.
we can limit the parking to town
I
residents.
don't think so. I don't think you
We can't prevent people from entering the water
No.
on the
Can't.
Great Pond, but we can
I don't
prevent
think
parking
you're
on
opening
private
up a
property.
huge-
No, it's been
No,
opened
it's a
up,
town.
it's been opened up,
Oh,
because they've been
believe
working
me,
with
I
town
have
council.
ran through this for like 6 of my 9 years for the boat rent committee and the property between Amadons and the lake. I think you're treading on thin ice by doing that. You know, do what you do, but I
We've
think that
expressed those
initiating,
concerns to them.
yeah, I think initiating stickers again is wrong. It's just saying this is mine and you can't come here.
I think that the
That's-
tricky
that's
part is,
Bullshit.
here's the thing, Scott, I'll tell you,
I'll go along with it, but you
No.
guys can have it.
when Miriam was little and I used to go to the beach every freaking day all summer, it was never a problem to get a parking spot.
Yeah.
Right, in the last 2 summers, driving by the beach,
Everybody that
you
parks
cannot-
there is at the beach, so what are you gonna say? You can't park and go to the
But
beach.
the number of people that are on that beach that are from Barrington hanging on the beach, they're not boating, they're not using it as a great pond because they're boating.
They're at the beach.
Yeah, but every other town with public beach charges for parking and has,
But there's not state boat ramps. That's your hang up.
anyway,
That's-
it's the parks, it's not,
Legally.
we don't have, yeah.
The beach shouldn't be there. You're not supposed to swim at a public boat ramp, and that's a public boat ramp.
Do you remember-
We swim at.
Do you remember when the beach was on the other side of the road at Brewer Pond?
No,
That
I
was
always
popular.
suggested that that's where it should be, because we've got the trail that goes around the lake, and right where all the
Yeah.
kayaks and stuff are, could be all the parking. The boat ramp could be where the boat ramp is. I mean, you know,
Would you really wanna swim in Burr Pond?
well, you're swimming in it now, it's the same water, huh?
It's the same water, but it's not the same surface to stand on.
So,
You have to do
You'd
a
have to
little
make a
work
beach,
from
is what
the
you're saying.
3 tubes to the left.
so
would
my,
need to get modified. Sure.
my understanding was that when they did the tubes and the dam on Beartown Mountain Road, they made a beach on Brewer Pond. And people refused to use it.
It wasn't a beach, it was over by the dam. There
Yeah.
was no real beach in that area. There was no sandy
There was a
beach
swimming
saying there
area.
it was. There was just the stone abutment. And you were actually requested to stay away from it because of the dam inlet. Of course, all we did was go to it. And it was amazing to be hanging out in that thing when it was first constructed. You could go in under the water and go down in it, and in the long tube, sit and hold your water back, 2 or 3 of you. And then it would build up on you and you come shooting out, and it was all beautiful. There wasn't a reed in sight, no suckers, no anything. And it was a blast. 1971 or 2. We had the greatest of times there. But I don't remember there-
alive then.
But I don't remember there
to
being
say
a
that.
beach. I don't remember them ever putting
But there was one summer they asked you not to use the town beach.
It may have been when they took the sluice out.
Yeah.
Cause there used to just be a sluice way,
Okay,
and the road didn't go straight up the hill. It went and then up
right,
to where Sylvan Road is, and then at the very top, where the arc, at the very top of the hill.
which, are we talking about the road around Brewer Pond?
No,
Going up Tyringham.
Tyringham
turn on
Road,
Sylvan.
now the
Okay.
road just goes
Right,
straight.
right.
It just goes straight up. It used to take a right,
Yeah,
and go by
right.
Dean Amidon's house,
Right, and
and
then,
then go like
Yeah.
this, and come back up. And there was a big
yeah, you can still
sluice,
see with the remainder.
which they took out,
Okay,
and it was just a spillway that was only, inches of water in it. And they put the tubes there and changed the whole road around. There's still guardrails
right,
from where the old road used to be. And the beach was much smaller than it is now. But the state came in at that point when they made that change around and said, this is your legal boat ramp. So they have been gracious enough not to enforce it. So they kind of let sleeping dogs lie with that.
So just so you're aware,
But you can do like I say, you
Well,
park down that whole place.
just so you're aware, the Parks Commission asked this question 2 years ago, and then they asked it again about this past spring or summer. And they have worked with town council and gone over the agreement with the state about the parking,
Mhm.
and they know what they're getting into.
All right, like I say, Animal Carpenter, I'm not a lawyer, somebody wants to hassle that out.
and it's not, and it's the parks doing it, that we're just talking about. the
Because we
budget.
went through this years ago, and it was a terrible thing to try to do. It was permitting, monitor, now we have to pay somebody to monitor it, is that really where we're headed?
So they're also gonna pay.
What's gonna happen in the center of Monterey when there's cars going into the general store on Sunday and you can't get there? Because you live in town, but somebody driving through is there, and we're gonna monitor that, you can't park here, because we gotta save it for somebody that's local. I just think that it's a weird precedence to try to set.
I'm told they're also gonna pick up poop, garbage.
Poop.
Yes, and they're gonna tell people that bring dogs that they can't bring dogs.
I haven't
Well,
really-
we can cross that bridge when we get to it, right? Right now,
Make sure you wear boots.
right
I'm
now,
guessing it's
So
mostly
that's the main-
goose poop that's the
Yeah.
issue, but.
Well,
Which actually.
I can't wait to watch them do that. I'll actually go to the beach
I mean,
to see
you know.
them do that.
To pick up the goose poop.
Yeah, baby, hey.
It's gonna be like a
Service.
transfer station job, you know, I mean, they're proposing 3 days a week for 6 hours a day for 10 weeks, I mean, that's gonna be a special person that applies for that job.
Yeah.
One last thing you need, so does that mean somebody's sitting off under the maple tree all by himself? Yeah. Is
And
this
actually,
guy
I'm
gonna
sure
come
what
up
they
and
do once
start?
they find someone that
you
doesn't
know.
have a sticker, do they issue a ticket?
Well, they're supposed to tell them that they can't park there, I mean, I expressed to the Parks Commission that I thought I was putting that person in a bad position, because as soon as the person says, yeah, you know, that then they have to call the police, and now we have an ordeal.
well, I think we gotta discuss with the finance committee.
Great.
Yes, so I did warn them that, you know, there was some pushback to this position, and that they'd likely be called in for their meeting.
I mean, the only thing I can say, and this might be out of turn, but if they want to go through with, we could have the cops do occasional drive-bys and issue actual tickets,
Oh,
right?
boy.
Rather than try to have someone walking around having arguments with people on the beach. I'm not necessarily saying I prefer it, I'm just saying that, you know, if that's the way Parks wants to go, and we're talking about when they're not supposed to, it does put like a beach monitor in a bad situation, right? Like, I wouldn't wanna go argue, like, whose car is this? Like, how is that actually gonna work? But it's the
Well,
parks, they gotta
let's
do it,
take,
not
yeah,
us,
let's
so.
take that up
Yeah.
with the finance committee and the Parks Commission.
I think that might be for the parks.
There's a lot of obstacles.
Mhm.
If people really want it.
And so I'm meeting with Jim tomorrow to talk about the tractor and whether that will be coming off or not, and I'm meeting with Sean on Monday morning before he has the joint meeting with you guys on Tuesday, and there may be some changes to his budget too, that'll.
So what is the Tuesday meeting? Is it just,
Tuesday is the joint at 5 o'clock, Sean is coming in at 5, and then after that, you guys can go through the rest of the budget.
what I wanna do is kind of the thing where we read through it and who has any things, and if we can make decisions at that meeting, we can make them there, and if we have to research more, at least we know what lines we're talking about.
Bingo,
Okay,
sounds great.
The old school way.
It's a quick methodology.
and that would be
And
literally.
Michelle's on board with that too, very mentioned it to Michelle.
So
Wait,
so
there's
That
no
would
we'll
be
have,
include this version, right, the FY 24.
Yes.
Yeah.
There's some accounts that are concerned about trying to find.
I mean, with
No,
every.
no, I just wanna know.
You're gonna
make
meet
sure
with
I'm
Sean
marking
first,
the
just to
right
talk
thing.
about this. but
Cherry sheets, recaps, all that towards the end of it.
I don't usually give that, no.
I know, but the whole thing,
I'll have
so
that,
you can
I'll
get
have that, yes.
special articles, don't mind me, I'll just talk.
And you guys will just go through and like hold, so we know where the.
We haven't even really started on the special articles yet.
Yeah, they gotta be in
I'm
there.
hoping, they're in there,
Yeah, yeah.
right, on the last page. And I'm whittling them down.
Because that should be part of the final bottom line.
We sort of have,
See
like
the
we were
bottom
just
line,
talking
if we're
about.
under,
the
we're
one
good.
from the Parks
We have
Commission.
talked about some.
And we've talked about the police cruiser, we've talked about, we've talked about a lot of this.
No, we've dealt with some, I don't think we've gone through the thorough review.
No.
This finance committee wanted to deal with the operating budget first, which I think is fair.
Okay.
So that, we'll have that joint meeting next Tuesday at 5. Item 6 is appointments to the Board of Registrars. So, Town Clerk is one member by default, and then we need 3 other members. So this is a Republican, an unenrolled, and a Democrat. I move to appoint to the Board of Registrars for a term of 3 years, Brian Jeffries, Kathryn Roberts, and Steve Pullen.
Okay.
Any discussion about that?
I do have one question, do we need to stage them?
To stagger them?
Yeah.
It's a difficult question.
That's the only kind we specialize in those.
When we have been making appointments to the Conservation Commission, those are supposed to be staggered, right? 3-year terms.
Can I ask, do we have to stagger them?
The problem
This
is,
is the question.
the problem is you'll ask town council and in
I
theory,
wanna ask the same question just asked, I was trying to ask the anti-question to stop the conversation, because if we do have.
okay, here's the thing.
Seemed like it was.
We're never supposed to be where we are now. The way that I'm familiar with this, because it came up with the Historical Commission, Conservation Commission, there's not really a part of the law where it says, if you've been without registrars for a few months, this is what you do. It usually says when you first start the committee, you stagger the terms, and from then on out, all the appointments are 3 years. And then that staggering continues and continues and continues. But both with the Concom and now at the Board of Registrars, and when we restarted the Historical Commission, it's kind of a weird point where you could say we're starting it, but we aren't really, there were people. And so we could stagger them, there's some merit to that, but we could also not stagger them because, I don't know, I don't think there's a perfect answer. That's why
Personally, I don't particularly care, I'm happy to put people in for 3 years and not have to deal with it again. On the other hand, I didn't wanna do something that would end up messing with someone in 3 years, right? Like, yeah, too bad, that's their problem, let's do it
Well,
for
no,
3
it's
years.
a good question, and in some ways, you make it much more difficult in 3 years to make them all end in 3 years. But what happens if you stagger them is sometimes they get overlooked and you end up with that problem. In theory,
Like what happened here?
yes and
How
no.
we're doing it
So
right
that's
now.
not really the problem. So the
Alright,
problem was there was a lot of
How about we
extra.
just say we'll stagger
Okay, just pick randomly, one's a 1 year, one's a 2 year,
Well,
one's
why
a
don't
3
we do
year.
this,
and-
since Brian is first, we could just do 3,
2 months.
2, and 1. So, that's not what happened here though.
It's okay.
What
Just
happened
happened now.
here was we had 2 people who were elected, and if you're elected, you can't have board of registrars. So we only, it's a long story.
So you could still have that,
I've been
right?
following that
But, yeah.
story.
But you can still have that because if people can run for office, but whatever, let's just.
Okay, so I'm going to rescind the motion, or amend the motion So the new motion is to appoint to the Board of Registrars Brian Jeffries for 3 years, Kathryn Roberts for 2 years, and Steve Pullen for 1 year.
I will second that.
So that's the new motion, staggered terms. Any other discussion? All right, we'll call a vote,
Yes.
Yes.
and yes, so it's a unanimous vote, and so now we have on the Board of Registrars Brian Jeffries for 3 years, Kathryn Roberts for 2 years, and Steve Pullen for 1 year.
Melissa, take note, 1 year from today, Steve gets reappointed.
I mean, unless we want, like, the other problem that you mentioned is when it expires. If it expires that many years from today, it's a little more awkward than
I'm sure.
having it from some other day, but what?
Well, the problem with these,
Right.
We're gonna have a good town clerk who's gonna remember who our board
Okay.
and
members are.
also don't wanna go into a rabbit hole, but the problem with fiscal year appointments in some cases like this is it's specified in Mass General Law, like a 3-year term.
Right.
So I don't think we have as much wiggle room as when we appoint someone to the Lake Garfield Working Group or the Community
Right.
Center for 8 months.
Like I said, I don't care, I just wanna make sure we don't
Yeah.
kick a can
No,
down the road.
I think this is
for
good,
another
I'm
month.
actually happy that
Okay.
we made that change, and
Okay.
I think that's actually probably the better way to go, so good. New business, community center, pavilion, procurement, Lori Shaw reached out to me, or I notified Lori Shaw that we're gonna be discussing this, cause she's the chair of the community center committee. And, submitted the initial request, and she is not available today, and she asked if we would be able to postpone the discussion for next week. At this point, I will say, I think it makes sense to postpone it, and it's actually probably been this way for a few weeks now, or months. But this is probably not gonna be right for annual town meeting. I'm just throwing it out there,
Then it won't be,
Ready,
right,
right,
for annual town meeting.
ready to go forward for any of them.
I think the goal at some point was put out, figure out what we're doing, put out a bid in January, get responses in February, know how much money we need, bring it to annual town meeting. But for a slew of reasons, that didn't happen, and I just wanna throw that out there. I think we're headed in that direction, probably. But other than that, we'll pick it up next week.
is Melissa, is there a way to get the money approved? I mean, then it would just go to free cash, right, if it didn't get spent, so that's not.
Well,
We don't
that's
know how
not
much
my,
we need.
that's not my concern. My concern was more about knowing how much we need. And in theory, I mean, if we're able to put out a bid in a couple weeks and we get the bid a couple weeks later back, and everything runs very smoothly,
No, I understand.
it's possible we could have the figures and put it in the budget.
If there's, if you could throw 80 into the budget for this project.
We could,
doing that.
yeah. I mean, I just think it's,
It may not be the best way to do it.
I mean, I think there's something to be said for doing that, but on the other hand, there's just so many unknowns. And if we're gonna seek any kind of a variance from the typical plumbing or sewer, septic systems, that takes time, and we don't
Yeah,
want,
it does.
it'd be, I think in some ways better, I mean, I'd like to see projects move along as much as the next person, but I also, it's gonna be
So
difficult.
another year with the tent, basically, is what they're gonna be faced with,
I mean, at
more
this
than
point,
likely.
it was gonna be another year with the tent anyway,
Yeah,
because
right.
construction
So
work,
that's- Exactly.
Yeah, and I'm not saying to not keep moving along,
Oh, I agree,
but,
I agree.
I
We don't
just
know,
wanna throw it out there.
yeah, it's loose.
So we're, at the very least, we're deferring.
Yeah, we'll discuss it, I'll put it right on the agenda for next week when Lori's here, which is really all that needed to be said, I just threw in some 2 cents extra.
Okay.
Just to prepare, and look, if things go well and we have a bid out in a couple weeks, we're all in agreement, have a bid out in a couple weeks, have a response back a couple weeks after that, and everything goes well, it still could be right for annual town meeting, I just preparing us for the fact that that may not be. Next item is discuss the Curtis Road Bridge detour over Gould Road. So,
Yeah, that's crazy money, isn't it?
Jim brought this up.
So,
So paving's not cheap either, but paving's paid for out of Chattanooga.
I can't believe that the use of that. Now, and also, who's this, the guy who was reaching out, you have anybody, anything you wanna talk to me, Neil, Mark Neil,
Well, Paul Mark,
possibly?
the one I sent you today about.
Yeah,
his
what's
town
his
hall
bag,
hours.
what's he about?
He's a senator, right?
Well, then he's the one we wanna write a letter to. We need assistance with this.
With
This
what
town,
part?
with our blinking light that's gonna cost us $100,000 or
He's
whatever
probably
it is.
gonna tell you you're getting $1 million bridge for free, so.
No, that's
So-
not good enough. We saved the town that much money on our own bridge, so can we reach out to him? He just asked us if you have anything you wanna talk to me about, well, here we go. You
So-
never know till you try.
I did see, Mary Maycook had her video on, I don't know, are you trying to speak? No, she left.
So,
Listen.
I just wanna make sure I got the options correct, that were kind of discussed and on the table. Option, and this is not in order of preference, it's just in order that I mentioned, it's random,
Mhm.
consider it random. Option one is widen that end of Gould Road, I'll call it Lover's Lane, which would involve taking some, trees down and resurfacing that portion, it's unclear what surface that would be, and repaving the upper portion and part of River Road. Option two is doing some of the paving, but the Lover's Lane part would stay one lane and have lights. And option three would be to take longer to do the bridge project, but do one lane at a time. Did I cover all of the three options that?
One
were-
lane on a time on the
On,
bridge.
right,
using the
leave
bridge
Curtis
the whole
Road
time.
open, but we would extend the operational time by doing it one lane at a time. Are those the three options that were kind of discussed?
I think they are, but I think there's a little bit of clarification.
Yeah.
Which is that Sean came to us about a year ago, or more or less 6 months. Or he came to me at some point when I was on the board.
It just gets worse as you get older.
Well, he was still the director of operations and asked us that one season and you don't use the bridge at all, or 3 seasons and you have to do a detour. And we told him with some degree of certainty, we wanted to do 1 season and close the bridge down. I don't know if we're bound to that yet, I don't know.
By who?
Yeah, I remember they were asking us what we were gonna do.
Who's
They-
they?
The state, because they were trying to plan for the big project. I would have to go back and see if he
If we actually commit to that.
committed to that.
We might, so it might be even too late to say we wanna do 3 seasons with the bridge up.
In which case, it would be only the other two options,
The only other
either
two
one
options.
lane or 2 lane paved.
Yes,
Well, why do we have to pave it?
You
we
mean-
don't have
shall.
to.
That would
But
sit a lot better if they widen the road, because there's a lot of roads that you pass. Trucks, whatever happens to be on it, you're gonna make way. We improve that to the point where we can get past it for less than the cost of the blinking light would be. Is it an improvement to the road and to society?
in chapter 90, can you chapter 90 gravel roads with more gravel?
Or
Can you
was just,
chapter 90?
you know,
It's a really good.
'cause I'm just curious, I know paving that road would, people would be very uptight about that.
He might be able to do that, I
But
can't
why
remember if it's
did
the
he-
log ceiling or the one that looks like it's paving, but it's not.
Chip
but-
sealing, and he
Chip,
mentioned that.
yeah.
So that's like art school, the first bit of art school, Fairview, the Beartown Mountain Road.
And I actually will say, as someone who, since I live on Griswold, I frequently use art school when the weather's bad because of the chip seal. It makes a big difference in how, it does improve the road, is all I'm saying.
I think the problem, with chip seal, you might as well pave.
Well,
In terms of appearance, and my sense is just do the light and eat the cost, and if people wanna vote it down at town meeting for the cost, then we'll do plan B, we can tell them, if you vote down the light, we're gonna pave Lover's Lane with chapter 90 funds. But it's a lot of money, but it's a permanent change. And you get rid of, it's not even called Lover's Lane, right? It's just a colloquial,
Right.
for a reason. It's kind of a beautiful road, dirt road with rows of trees.
Used to be Lover's Lane.
Well, you couldn't really park there and do the
Oh,
Lover's
sure.
Lane.
Oh, yeah. Yes.
Man, yeah, just the thought of parking on that narrow part of road in the dark.
Today when we talked about parking. Apparently that's a hot spot for parking down there.
How about the old conch pot?
So,
I'd rather park there.
so, so that's my sense, is, you eat $60,000. If it's less than if it's just a construction season, it's gonna be only 8 months, right, not 12, hopefully.
Sure, but you better budget with the state for.
Yeah,
I
I was
asked
just gonna
him if
say.
he thought it was a minimum of a year, and he said yes.
I saw that,
So, I
but
mean,
the way it's been explained to us before was a construction season.
Well,
And
that's assuming it all goes well. So the construction season might be a construction season and a half, right? So, but that would be a
It's
different
only
fiscal
part of
year.
fiscal year 24, because I don't think they're starting until. But what's their schedule too? Are they gonna close it like in October and then not start until
Oh, God.
April?
Well, I
you
thought
know
they were
what I
gonna
mean?
start,
It says we are on there for fiscal year 24. I just don't know if that.
I don't know
means
if that,
July
if
1
they're
or
gonna
maybe-
try and do it all at once, they're gonna start as soon as things thaw out in the spring, right? That's what I assume.
You can assume that with the state. But wasn't there one of those estimates, purchase of such item
Yes, and
and
the interesting,
ownership?
the interesting thing to me was
Couldn't be
the
more
ownership. It is more expensive, but not, only by about 10 grand.
Yeah, and then you own it,
And
Right.
here,
to which you could possibly rent it
Right.
out.
here is why I would even raise that. What's gonna happen with detouring when we do this?
If we do it.
And-
Okay,
and,
but it's
you know, we could
still
put
a
it up to
question.
beach.
Like, for a moment, assume we are, that one might, because it's 23, that one might have to be one lane at a time.
Yeah.
So that's a possibility.
Well,
like-
where are
You
you
would still
assuming the
need lights,
detour
wouldn't
goes?
Pardon?
Where are you assuming the detour goes?
I don't know.
Well, it's.
These, I only have
it's-
questions, not
Isn't it
answers.
Fairview, over and down Tyringham,
Good God.
Or Wellman,
or
Wellman to our other detour,
Oh my God.
right, it would be
do
Wellman.
them
The
both at once.
conversations I've heard have been that it's likely to remain
Right,
open for
but,
emergency vehicle purposes and.
and if it does, but even if it does, you still need lights because you can only do one lane of traffic at a time. So,
It could also be decades before that project actually gets done,
this is very
Fiscal year
true.
25 we're looking at.
Pardon?
if we proceed.
25.
This
Well,
bridge,
fiscal year 25 is where we would be putting the money on, which is not 750,000 like we originally thought. It's gonna be like 250, possibly even less if we keep going for grant money.
Really?
for
Isn't
this
that a
replacement
piece
of
of good
this,
news?
Yeah, that's a
250
piece
grand.
of news, actually.
Yes, but that's what I asked.
I can't believe it,
Grant money.
We couldn't either.
what, 4
We have a
million?
very good
4
meeting
million.
together. We have a monthly meeting about that and that's
Oh,
what it's looking
awesome.
like.
Great. Well, then,
But
well, then we can take that money we're gonna save, and put it towards buying a light.
what I was just gonna say is if we're talking about that being 2025, buying the light looks better and better for an extra 10 grand.
Yeah.
Shoot it down if you want, but.
Well, I wouldn't forecast, I wouldn't do it because we think we're doing the culvert on 23.
Well, I would do it with a little of that in my background, but knowing that if it's 6 months, I mean, what they thought a year was 60 grand plus some setup
It's 5 grand a month.
versus
Wash-
76 or so for the purchase of the thing.
Because
Because what if it goes longer than they originally estimated that rental for? And all of a
So I
sudden we're
got-
into it for 92.
The rental quote is 5 grand a month.
Yep.
Plus a $1,700 per service call.
And
Is that
setup.
right? I don't know, it's.
But tell
awkward.
me why on the flyer, it says temporary traffic signals usually cost $10,000 to $100,000. But our system costs about $850 per month.
Are you kidding? I don't have the flyer in front of me, I only loaded the.
It says it,
rental estimate.
PLT 2.4X. It says it right here.
I didn't even read those carefully. Cost of operation. I'm betting what they're saying is that's what it costs electricity to run the dang thing.
I don't know.
That would be, because operational cost isn't what it costs you to buy it. Operational cost is what it costs you to run
I guess, I don't know. Seems
it.
like
No,
they're
I'm pretty sure about
being-
that.
It seems like they're being,
Oh, so that's more than 5,000 a month then, huh? You gotta figure that's gonna tie into.
well, I think this is just these people kind of misleading.
Yeah,
Why don't we
probably
look
it
and
is.
see if like Pittsfield or United Rentals has one for much less.
We buy it, we can always rent it out to other towns that need it.
I mean, we buy industrial machinery from United Rental all the time, or,
Oh, like a
Similar
used
place
one,
like that.
yeah.
and they, I'm almost
What
positive.
about
that they
Municipal?
don't have one.
Would there be a set of lights on Municipal?
Well, you need the good system, because this
Oh,
has,
it'll be what this is, it's just somebody else has already used it.
Used it, right, somebody else is off, they just did the same thing, they bought one for some project that's
I'm
now
sure.
complete, and they're happy to get it out of their garage.
I'd look into United Rentals in Springfield, or the one up in Albany, but Springfield's the one that you see around here the most. So say, you had one of these items,
you know what I'm gonna do, I'll reach out to Terry and see what they did. Cause there was probably a state bridge, right?
I'm
the
guessing.
one down by the Terry.
Ontario Road,
No one
right, at the
does
bottom of
any
the hill.
bridges. And they had this light,
Okay.
it's pretty bad.
I use that road a lot.
At least there, you could
Didn't think it-
look straight
Yeah,
across
just
and say,
drive
there's
through the red
nobody here.
Exactly,
You know, it's one thing if you're on the bottom of Lover's Lane, generally.
exactly, there's no
minutes.
visibility.
Alright, so
Alright.
we'll continue to look into that and,
But what I'm hearing is that nobody's happy with the idea of taking down the streets and widening the road. Am I wrong about that?
I think it's a
That's
bad long-term decision.
I'm not debating that, I just was trying to make sure I was clear on what you guys thought. I was not expressing a different opinion, I wanted to clarify what your opinions were. Okay,
I could swallow widening the road and leaving it dirt a lot more than,
I don't love taking the trees down.
I know.
You know, and I see why, visibility is important, but it is a cool road.
Yeah.
I just don't want an accident.
maybe just drive through the field for the time being.
I love it. Alright,
One side of the road, going one way, and just move the fence in. Let's do something.
sorry.
I did think about that though.
No traffic lights on Municipal.
Pardon?
No traffic lights on Municipal. I don't see any on United Rentals either.
Is it worth calling them to ask?
But I will ask Jim to ask, find another place.
Right.
But speaking of municipal vulnerability plan grant contract amendment. So this, I was mistaken, I thought it was about the, master plan, but it's about the culvert, phase 2 of the culvert,
On Hoop River.
Culvert.
right here.
Oh, this one, okay,
Oh, I
sorry,
forgot
thank
about
you,
that
thank you.
too. Yeah. We got
You
that.
read where it
That's
says you're gonna need a
Yeah,
traffic
that's
light.
Anyway, so this is a little bit more money being paid out of the phase 2 grant for the culvert program, just to go to Berkshire Regional Planning Commission. So I would move to accept the contract amendment with Berkshire Regional Planning Commission.
Second,
Any discussion on that? Being none, we'll call a vote.
Yep.
And yes, so it's unanimous, yes. Is there a clean one to sign?
Just, yeah.
Okay.
What about the other one?
So while we're at it, unanticipated business was the
You have letters for each of you if you wanna read them.
letter about the Hupai Road culvert rainwater runoff filtration system.
right,
So basically, this came about from after our meeting, Justin, where he said that there was more money available. We ended up having another kickoff meeting with Courtney and the RPC, Jim, myself, the engineer on this project, and Malcolm again, and Jim mentioned how he wanted to put in a few more culverts if possible. She had some changes to the rain gardens, additional locations, and Malcolm again suggested that there was more money and this is what he wanted her to do. So this, Courtney drafted up this letter, and if you guys approve it.
The only thing I'm confused on is the town wants to request $30,000 for the 2 additional catch basins. The town wants 12,000 for BRPC's additional work, makes sense. The middle figure of 70,732, so we are asking to increase the match as.
Well, no, so when the project total goes up, the match also goes up, because it's a percentage of the total.
Okay.
But that match is gonna be we're still gonna be able to use the diverse assisted section harvesting.
Yeah.
The
Community
community
compact,
compact, we got permission to use that fully on this.
and the MVP phase 2,
Yeah.
that's what he said, right?
Right,
It's the MVP.
municipal vulnerability.
So we can use that as a match against this, and this as a match against that, or something.
Strange, but yes.
The only thing I was confused about is how the 95,500 comes up, because it seems like we're asking $30,000 for the catch basins and 12,000 for the BRPC administration, which seems to be 42.
I would have to pull up the original, but I think the difference is in the public outreach.
Yeah.
And the construction.
Okay.
I think she just had to justify the monies on our end, like what.
Okay.
In the long meeting.
Alright,
But it is confusing.
and so this is gonna be a bigger project, and we're also gonna push off a
Yes.
season.
Yes, because the original date was this fall.
Yeah.
So
Yes.
everybody agreed that we wouldn't be able to meet those deadlines.
Alright, I would move to approve the letter about the Hupai Road drainage project.
Second.
Any other discussion? Call a vote,
Yeah,
and yes, so that's unanimous, yes.
Do we want to sign one of them?
Why don't we do this one? Just clean it up.
Sorry.
Are we sticking with the unanticipated business?
Or do we have other unanticipated business?
I have two things, yes. So the Bidwell Park article that we had for the 29,000. All the tree work's been done by John Field, that came in much less than we anticipated. Jim still has some final cleanup and seeding and stuff to do. One of the things when we met with Courtney from BRPC was about the rain gardens, and the original locations that they had picked, I guess, was the beach, and I can't remember what the second location was, but after doing a site visit with her, Jim and I, we went down there, we went out here. Because of the amount of trees that were pulled, the bank needs some stabilization. And she suggested that that would be a really good location for the rain garden. So what I'm asking, is there's probably gonna be about 4,000 left in the monies that you approved at town meeting for the storm cleanup. Would you consider stabilization of the bank part of that, or would you prefer that whatever is left I add to the town meeting warrant as a transfer to a new article for bank stabilization?
What does the accountant think?
So the accountant said it depends on what the discussion was at town meeting, and I really don't remember what the discussion was, if you just talked about taking down trees, or if you talked about the whole, like,
This is the
project as a
STM,
whole.
right?
Yeah,
Well, give
I think it would fall under the repair. The question is the 4,500 enough to do the repair?
yes, she's comfortable with that.
I think it generally does. Let me just go back, cause I know, like, I wrote an article for Monterey News or something about what the tree order was gonna be. I just wanted to look back at that and see what we kind of said the project was, because if it's,
And you didn't say that this is point specific to everything that'll be done.
maybe we did,
I don't recall you doing that.
So the accountant like
That was
concerned about
on
what you
Monterey
voted,
News.
what you discussed at town
Town
meeting,
meeting.
like what
He's
actually
saying
came
he
up, right? I know.
Yeah, let me think, if you don't mind,
Yeah, no, no.
we'll take the week, or I'll take the week and think back. I mean, I think it generally falls, we remove trees, you leave bare earth,
And
you
you don't
wanna
want
stabilize
to,
with plants.
right.
Probably makes sense within the scope of the project. This would go to, the money would go to BRPC, or who would the money go to?
No, the money would go toward buying the plants to plant there.
And who would install
It'll all be part of this project, whoever's.
Whoever's doing the planning for
Yeah,
that.
I think the Native Working Plants Group has something to do with it, the RPC.
I think it's a no-brainer that it runs hand in hand with what they're doing.
And I think getting it done is kind of important, because we don't want that bank to continue to erode.
And they just need to know because I.
Well, another week
Just
No, I don't
order
think
the-
that-
postponed,
Yeah,
and
Yeah, we
soil's
can't.
frozen in.
plant?
Yeah.
So you got your
Yeah,
week
Yeah, you got
to
You got
read
your-
your, the Monterey News, see what you said.
And then
See if you appoint specific or not.
the only other item, and I think Susan, you were gonna talk a little bit about this too, was I've left the copies of the review I've been doing with employees in the select board mailbox, and I'm requesting that all of you sign them, just acknowledging that you've read them. Mainly for the reason that you're aware of if there's any issues or positive things, because I don't have power to fire anybody, so if you're not aware, and these are my opinions only, they're not any of your opinions in there, so you're not breaking any open meeting laws by reading them and signing that you've seen them. You know, should employee A suddenly have a problem in a month, and I say, well, it was in the evaluation, but you guys weren't aware of it. This is just a way to keep you in the loop.
Does that not fly with the HR role and your role, that if there isn't a problem, there isn't a problem, and if there is, then the employee gets notified and we get notified?
So I did talk to Sophia about it, and she also feels that you guys should sign them, so that you're acknowledging that you are aware of how, employees are doing right now.
I'll talk to Sophia. I kinda wish it had been run by the board, just cause when I first saw the employee evaluations, I was kind of blindsided to see a select board signature spot. I know one of the principles of HR is kind of keeping situations as contained as possible. I thought that kind of the people who were doing the review would do it and it would go in the file and that was the end of that. I can see the advantage of it keeping board members up to date. I'll talk to Sophia.
I think it's a good conversation to have, because in the end, we are the higher firepower. And it's not necessarily our opinion, we're not reading each other's opinions, since we're not the ones who raised it.
Oh, no, I don't think it's an open meeting law violation.
Right,
I think it's, well, it kind of is in a way, if the fact that they don't get signatures means something, but I don't think it does. I think the employee evaluations exist, whether or not select board members sign off on them, so the signature really doesn't mean anything, right? It's not like, they don't mean it.
It doesn't, but I think from Sophia and my perspective, it's just that you're being made aware, there's nothing bad going on in them right now, but it's also for positive things, like, so you're aware of, who's being acknowledged for a great job.
I'm not sure.
How do they get introduced to us?
They're just in the mailbox, so I just want you guys to just sign my, actually leisure, not too much.
Like we come in and sign the warrants, you're just reading this?
Yeah.
I read through a bunch of them, like,
I mean, I've got a whole bunch to give you, so right now I've only got like 5 in there, because I was trying to ease them.
but I mean, I have the conversation and I'll be curious, like, what the outcome of it is, cause I don't know, in the end, we're the final boss, and I feel like I'd like to know when things are good, not just when things are bad. Maybe that's not realistic, and
Well, it is realistic, and it should be, but it is illegal.
It's legal, because it's my opinion, it's not yours. And
No, I'm not saying open meeting law, I'm saying HR
No, but he's
confidentiality, personnel files.
Yeah.
That's what I'm getting at, not open meeting law, unless the signatures meant something, which I think we're kind of in agreement they don't, to which the point being, why sign something when your signature doesn't mean anything?
Well, I think it's kind of a cover your butt for me as well, because if I'm managing these people and directing them, I don't want it to ever come back for you guys to say, well, you didn't let us know that there was a.
Well, isn't Sophia's signature on them?
No.
Well, that's probably where you need to go then, is that the two of you have reviewed them, and if between the two of you, you thought the select board needed to know something, then that was the way I thought the process worked. She checked you, you checked her. And then, because then if there is no issue,
there's no reason to upset it.
no reason for us to get involved.
Okay.
If there isn't it, I mean, I thought that was kind of how the policy got developed, wasn't it? That we're running with HR this year and 2 new positions, and we're letting those kind of do their job. So
You look like
otherwise,
you have a thought that you're not.
No, I just don't wanna get into cans of worms that don't
Okay.
need to be gotten into.
yeah, I don't either. I think that gets us out of it.
That's what I've been doing, I haven't been signing them.
Okay,
Good, I haven't been reading them.
alright,
Okay,
That was all I had.
Mail and correspondence, we didn't have any, we had the letter from Sean about Southern Berkshire, but we factored it into our decision making. Minutes,
I wanna bring up one question.
under unanticipated or minutes.
Minutes,
Yes.
but not specific to these minutes, so I'm not sure how you wanna classify it. So when Lori first came on, you worked with her a lot to winnow down the minutes. I feel like we may, from my comfort level, I feel like we may have overshot the mark a little, because the last few minutes I felt were basically like reading the agenda rather than reading minutes, because there wasn't really any meat in there, they weren't. So I've been like going back and re-listening to things and trying to beef up things a little bit, but I feel like I'm not sure what your comfort level with them is, or what your comfort level is, and from my perspective, I'd like to see a little bit more meat, because I feel like minutes, what's the idea behind minutes is, it's the official record of what happened, but also someone who didn't attend the meeting should be able to get the gist of what transpired and the important points by reading the minutes. If it says a discussion was had, well, you knew that a discussion was had by the fact that it was on the agenda. Of course there was a discussion, but just saying a discussion was had doesn't actually tell you any of the important points that were brought up, any decisions that were made, any of the important thoughts that were considered. It leaves out too much detail. So I sort of feel like we went from too much detail to too little detail, and I'd like more of a happy medium. That's my perspective, but.
You want that entered into the minutes?
No, I'm having a conversation about what, we
Yeah,
can't get Lori, we can't get the product we want unless we decide what we want, because we can't, she's gonna do what we're asking her to do, so we have to be clear on what the ask is.
I understand what you're getting at, it's kind of a discussion for every body that produces minutes, how specific do you want them?
Right.
I am comfortable where we're at personally. Now, you'll also see, I add, right, I'm dark blue or whatever this color is,
Yes.
I added some things. So
Wait, no.
apparently I'm not,
Wait, I don't think I have blue and red, I can't tell the difference between you and me. Can you?
I know, but they say that I'm colorblind too, so it doesn't help between dark blue and light blue.
I'm not seeing any dark blue, do you know any of these that were yours?
I only see the same color blue also.
Yes, so I'll tell you which. This is the darker blue, and that's the lighter blue.
Oh my God.
I'm so sorry that came out that way.
You know what, Susan, I understand what you're getting at.
Right.
I feel comfortable where we're at, but I'm not opposed, if you feel strongly about it, to ask for 25% or 50% more.
I'd even
Just
say
a little more
25,
detail.
just a little more detail, because it's, I don't wanna have to go through winnowing out as much as we did at the very beginning when there was no perspective. But I also don't wanna have to spend 2 hours rewatching the entire thing to make sure that I got all the important bits I thought weren't included in there.
Yeah.
It was a little worse with the 2-1 than with the 125, but that's, and the other thing I did, and.
The other thing we did 2-1 is we adjourned early and tabled a lot, which is unusual for us,
Right.
so it seems sparse when we say everything's tabled.
Right, the other thing that I wanted to run by you as an operational thing is, you know how we're always having this problem where we both try to change something and we end up having, it's difficult to figure out what it ended up as? One idea that I had about that, and I've used this in other times when I've had to group edit a document, is that rather than make the changes on the document, I highlight the area I'm interested in and write my alternative as a comment.
Yeah.
Which is like what ended up happening here with a couple of them.
Yes.
The idea being that then if you do that and I do that and Scott does that, we can read each one separate and pick the one we like, and we don't have to have the 3 different versions all intermingled.
Yeah, that would make it a lot easier to read.
And a lot easier in the end, we could just go A, B, or C, check, right?
It is gonna make it smaller type though, just.
Yeah.
Well, might as well.
So here's what we'll do in response to your 2 comments.
Okay.
I'm fine reaching out to Lori, she'll hear this as well.
Sure.
and just saying, you know, we would like about, just as an estimation, 25% more detail. So.
At least on any substantive discussion,
Yeah.
right? We don't need more detail, we approved a letter and we signed it. But when there's an important discussion, the main points of the discussion should be there. They don't necessarily have to be individually attributed, although they can be. I just think that if an important point is raised, it should be mentioned specifically.
Yeah, and then as far as the comments go, if anyone's gonna rewrite a section, if it's like a little typo or something, don't worry, just make it track changes. If you're gonna rewrite a section, do a comment. Okay. With that being the case, I will reach out to Lori.
Okay.
With that being said, let's start with 125.
Yep.
It's 1B of new business.
Oh, I'm having trouble figuring out what for discuss FY 24 budget would actually read.
I think we just delete that sentence,
That sentence, okay,
and that's that.
Okay.
That seems to be the consensus.
great. Yeah, 1B new business is that one, the second sentence is a little, the select board will continue discussing some of the open-ended estimates.
Yeah, there was a little awareness there.
So the grant is just doubled up, and then we have, I'll
Right.
just delete one of the grants, right?
Right,
But then the dirt section is fine. The select board will discuss some of the open-ended estimates of the proposal with Jim during the joint meeting next week and table the approval over the proposal till,
Okay.
right? So we
So
just
that
do
we'll
one.
continue.
Is out.
Yep.
That makes it happen.
okay.
Motion to approve minutes of 125 as amended.
Second,
No other discussion? Call vote.
Yep.
And yes, so that's unanimous.
bye-bye.
To 123. So the Beartown Mountain Road engineering proposal. Did Jim think that none of the exemptions of the contract were likely to be triggered?
That was the impression I had at the meeting.
Okay. Then we'll go with that. You never know when exemptions are gonna be triggered, I
Yeah.
guess. I just assume.
Likely is
Well,
likely.
even by us having said that or having this in there, doesn't make,
Doesn't make
if they
it.
do get triggered like home.
Right, and we can only go on the basis of likely, because that was the concern we asked him to look into. Are these likely to be a problem? And he said,
Right.
no, they're not
Which
likely to
of
be a problem.
these is we have to get.
So we'll go with the comment then there.
And it makes it sound like the water distribution system had just recently been abandoned.
No, but it was not, it was,
Right, the old version, yeah.
Long since abandoned, perhaps.
how do we word that?
Same thing right up until that, instead of this,
Say-
well, this system has long been
Long-
abandoned.
Yeah,
So we just add the word long.
Put this system back in.
I just changed it to,
oh, what is it?
and from this system to reported that the old water distribution system off Silk Road has long been
Yeah.
abandoned.
Yeah,
Well,
there you
Sylvan
go.
Road, period. This system has long been abandoned.
I think it is.
Yeah, either way, it works fine.
No one said is.
During, okay,
That
this,
just didn't like the
for
run
the duration
outside.
of during is there, right there. For the duration of the Curtis Road Bridge repair being closed, what?
So, and there was discussion about the detour. Jim provided details of his proposed alternate route over Gould Road, Lover's Lane. For the duration
Of the project?
of the Curtis Road Bridge being closed, right?
Okay, yep.
For the
just-
duration of, get rid of during, the
Yeah.
Curtis Road Bridge being closed, the board will need to decide whether to install
A pair.
Not a repair, yeah,
a pair,
a pair of what?
A pair.
Install,
Install or repair? That doesn't make sense. Whether to install.
I like this?
whether to, no, it's the two different blues are getting really,
I thought that one was orange.
There's no orange.
There's no orange here either.
Yeah, you're, oh,
I know that I wrote something there, it's like very.
we can just write this.
it's orange in my.
For the duration of the Curtis Road Bridge being closed, the board will need to decide whether to raise and widen, oh jeez. Let me see if I can do it.
Well, let me pull it up together and see what it.
So this is what I had drafted. Jim provided details of his proposed alternate route during the Curtis Ridge Bridge repair, which includes raising and widening the Lover's Lane portion of Gould Road, removal of 12 trees, and various surfacing options. The select board asked Jim to obtain some estimates for lights to manage one-way traffic on the Lover's Lane portion of Gould Road as an alternative to widening the road.
I like that.
Alright, then we'll
That's
just,
simplifies
if we just write
That
code
never came through,
Susan's.
why didn't
No,
So I'll
it
use, no, so what's weird is on this computer,
Right.
Justin is purple and that's blue, and apparently when it printed, it looks
maybe we're out of writing.
almost the same.
All I see is blue.
So we will just go with Susan's version as she just read.
That sounded better.
So use.
Okay.
Okay. Oh geez. Okay.
Yeah, I was really unhappy with this particular section.
Okay, including comparable town for sure, and a reassessment of employee drug testing policies, make sure procedures are to be. Acting,
Ethically.
right, and
I'm sorry, where?
the N got misplaced.
Okay.
It's just acting legally and ethically.
Oh, yeah.
I think also, my sense is that maybe part of the confusion was we did not stick to an agenda that meeting.
We bounced around, yep.
It was hectic and and disorderly, so.
Although, all of that came, when I watched it.
Yeah.
That was all at one go.
Yeah.
It wasn't like I pulled it from other places, that was all from that one discussion. Although we did bounce around a bit, we didn't bounce around that much. I think what we more did was we actually pulled things from later in the agenda up to make it one conversation, cause Sophia was there, like the town clerk description. We didn't
Except
actually
the
do
first.
these in that order, we had already,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
Well, I will take, it was I messed up on the agenda because Southern Berkshire was on there like 3 times.
It's fine, Like, I don't think that's a big deal, I just wanna make sure we actually cover, and this is weird too, so. My comment didn't, some of my comments came through, but, oh no, I see that's down here, alright. So this is your comment where you were trying to do the same thing, but you moved it down there? Is that, cause I can't tell the difference in the color, but I'm pretty sure that's not me.
Seems to read all right.
I think every time we'll accept the
Okay.
comment.
Okay.
Motion to approve February 1 as amended.
Second?
Discussion? None? Call a vote?
Yes.
And yes, so it's unanimous. Yes, as amended. On there. And, I will, well, Lori will see this, but I will reach out to her about 25% more detail. And
When it's there.
When it's an important substantive
Yeah,
matter.
Yeah,
And then also, the one other item was if you wanna rewrite a section, do it in the comments, which makes sense. Especially because the track changes thing merges documents in the weirdest way. It just like overlays them
And it gets really hard to figure it out, and like, I don't think it matters if we're changing a word, but it matters if we're changing a couple sentences, it's so hard.
unanticipated business, I think we dealt with it.
Yep.
There being no more,
Congratulations.
and there being no public, call a motion to adjourn,
Second.
vote
Yes,
yes, meeting adjourned at 7:47 PM.
I wanna throw one thing